Happy New Year. Time flies and 2018 is at an end. And following tradition, President Xi has delivered his New Year speech, summarizing what happened in the passing year and what the most important goals are for the year to come. So how was China's 2018 and what we have achieved and what key challenges lie ahead? To discuss these issues and more, I'm very happy to be joined by YING, Vice President of the China Institute of International Studies, and our old friend, DZODIN, Senior Fellow at the Center for China and Globalization. That's our topic. This is Dialogue. I'm Yang Rui. Welcome to our last edition of Dialogue with me, and of course through me with the rest of the world. I'm very happy to be with you and to share the joy of the last year. By the way, this is the second anniversary of CGTN, China Global Television Network. Let's say happy birthday to CGTN.
Thank you. Yeah, congratulations. I would like to take this opportunity to extend my warmest congratulations on the second anniversary of the launching of the CGTN. And it is also a great honor for me to do this last show to commemorate the 2018 with Mr. Yang Rui. I'm very much honored.
And like an iconic advertising slogan from America says, "You've come a long way, baby." So CGTN just gets better and better. So for being 2 years old, it's pretty mature.
Hope the U.S. attempt to label CGTN as an agent of government won't cause misinterpretations about what we do, the decency of our job. By the way, what do you think of the highlights of President Xi Jinping's New Year address?
Well, I thought it was a great speech, and as always, that like all the previous 5 speeches, I think this is the fifth. The fourth speech has been very much, I think, personal, very much, I think, touching and moving, and address directly to the average people in China, and also making a very positive sort of message to the world. Indicating, highlighting the contributions and also the confidence of China, that is the fast developing and rising China that would continue to commit to the development of the people of Chinese people, and making contribution to the peace and development of the world.
And I was impressed, Harvey. I wonder if you agree with me that President Xi wants to deliver a morale-boosting, down-to-the-earth message to say heartfelt thanks to those rank-and-file Chinese who have made enormous contributions to the construction of Chinese economy and, of course, social progress. What do you think are those lines that have impressed you with regard to whatever social, economic, or bilateral relationship?
Well, I thought it was a great speech. What I like about it is that unlike some world leaders today, it was spoken confidently and cogently, and it showed a person in command, in authority, but also addressed people from the person with the simplest job to the highest level of physicists, scientists, and so on. So I thought that it was a great speech, and if I were Chinese, I'd be very proud of my president, but I'm still proud that I had the opportunity to witness such a speech as this.
As we are talking to the rest of the world through CGTN, 2 years after its relaunch, let's draw a parallel comparison, if I could, between President Xi's year-end radio and television address and the speech, union of the speech. I mean, the speech that the U.S. President delivers in the U.S. Congress. What do you think of representation of the audiences there, Harvey?
Well, the speech obviously in the United States Congress, the State of the Union address, which is required by the Constitution, is not written by President Trump, because when he speaks, he uses single syllables, and the speech uses at least 2 or 3 syllables. In terms of the audience, of course, the audience is mostly a congressional one, although many people watch it on social media or TV. But the speech is more political in America. It's really an extension of a campaign, whereas this speech of President Xi was really like a report to the country of what's come from before and what lies ahead. I found it very inspirational. I haven't found many State of the Union addresses either inspirational or memorable, and I believe that most pundits feel the same way about the American presidents, all American presidents.
Along
speeches.
with many across the world as the audience, I was impressed by the presentation of Donald Trump 2 years after he took office. I mean, half of the House, half of the Congress was very warm in giving their reactions and feedback to his speech, but the other was eerily silent, except for the military and those from the judiciary. They are expected to be neutral. So what do you think of the divided society in the United States, and in sharp contrast to the solidarity that we display in shaping our roadmap of development and social progress?
Indeed, I think the State of Union address is different because of the style and different because of the politics. And if you look at the audience, it is true that you would find that the one side of the aisle, if I can say, they are applauding, the others will remain silent. And basically, I think this is what the life of the U.S. And for this speech, certainly, I think it's different. It's different because it's addressing the nation, I mean, the people as a whole. But it's more importantly because I think the Chinese people, I mean, while we're watching our president and speaking about the progress that have been made in the past year, particularly I think the contribution made by the people, the average people, and we are very proud of. We feel a strong sense of association. It's a strong sense of contribution, and also, of course, a strong sense of pride. And looking ahead, and again, I think President Xi in his speech talked about that there are difficulties, there are challenges ahead, but I think he presented his way in a confident, in the sense that it had to continue to work hard and with the support of the people, and talking about average people, talking about scientists, talking about particularly I think he mentioned about the delivery man, talking about the street cleaners, and talking about the average people, the people we need and our day-to-day life, and sometimes may not pay attention to. So it's exactly the point where I think
in fact,
very much touched.
I'm very glad that some media players in the United States share much the same gratitude towards the ordinary people in China. For example, a group of workers in Shenzhen were elected People of the Year by Time magazine, and that somehow showcased the sacrifice made by migrant workers who have changed the skylines of many major cities in China.
It's been a tradition, if I could say something for our institution of the presidency, it's been a tradition to showcase people who've done great things, whether they're firefighters or pilots. So when a plane landed on the Hudson River a few years ago, that pilot was present at the State of the Union address. It was during President Obama's time. So this is a time to showcase some of the best of America. But I must say that over the years, the divisions in the Congress are on view in the State of the Union address, and our Congress is becoming more raucous, like the British House of Commons, than like the Congress used to be.
Yes, indeed, some representatives would be invited by President of the country, head of the state, to address in an effort to elevate the spirit of what we call China Dream or American Dream. Having said this, what do you think of this catchphrase that President Xi used in his presentation? Happiness comes from struggle. Then how happy was 2018? A lot have happened in the passing year.
Oh, indeed. I think this is, again, if you look at the year 2018, we would find that this phrase has been repeated, highlighted again and again. This is achievements, the progress that China has been made is because of the hard-working because of the hard working of the Chinese nation as a whole, and particularly I think the average people, ordinary people. And it is because of the spirit of the Chinese as a nation that have been working hard, because of the spirit of innovation, hard working. And I think he emphasized in this address continuously that looking ahead in the year 2019, when we need to face up the difficulties, to deal with the challenges, to grasp opportunities, we'll continue to have to work.
This is an occasion, obviously, for the Chinese listeners and audiences to draw inspirations from the voice of their president. Now, obviously, the adversity of the economic situation would have to prompt the people to think very hard about the vicissitudes and hard times that we are facing in the year to come and foreseeable future. So what do you think of the impact of the downward economic pressure upon not only this country, but China is fast becoming a major powerhouse economically? And what does that mean for the rest of the world? Harvey.
China is growing rapidly and economically becoming, and in some measures is the leading economy of the world. So with that comes responsibilities, actually. So China is not existing as an island unto itself. It's also assuming the mantle of leadership, not only economic, but political. And I believe that President Xi's speech is an attempt to make Chinese people feel proud and also to steady themselves for what good or bad things may come in the year ahead. I thought the speech was very moving.
And one specific measure that is being rolled out by the Chinese authorities is the reduction of taxes and fees for enterprises, particularly the private part of the Chinese economy, to be cheered on and to feel that they are confident again, because confidence is exactly the catchphrase that we need so badly in our vocabulary when we look into the future. What do you think will be the impact of such policy options for the Chinese government to lift our confidence and to elevate people's spirit?
Yeah, indeed. I think the word confidence, as I remember that the former Premier Wen Jiabao, when he talked about the financial crisis 2008, that he said that confidence is more precious than gold. I think as Chinese looking back this year, 2018, and then beyond, because this year also marks the 40th anniversary of reform opening. And
also the 10th anniversary of the financial meltdown that broke out in Wall Street.
Exactly. China would certainly feel very much confident, very much proud of what I have achieved. And this is the foundation. This is the source of confidence. And as we look ahead, entering the year 2019, and China certainly with that solid foundation, with such a hard working of the people, and with the leadership of President Xi at the center, at the core, I think China and the Chinese as a nation are becoming even more confident, even though the challenges ahead are very much there. As President Xi again said, we are like climbing a mountain. We are now uphill tasks, many ahead, upstream sort of problems ahead. But with that foundation, with that confidence, I believe that Chinese people are very much, I think, confident and inspired to face up these challenges and to grasp the opportunities to fulfill the tasks and to meet the goals ahead.
Hardly could we see and hear different voices on the social media in China because of the special situation. Now, on the one hand, we have this unprecedented solidarity of the Chinese leadership, which is largely described by our domestic media as a blessing for the future and for navigating our social and economic development. On the other hand, we've heard many critical opinions from the outside. As an expat here who has followed China's development, what kind of advice can we solicit from people like you so that we have a balanced picture about what we have today?
That's a pretty tall order. First of all, I think for China, that given what may happen next year, we have to hope for the best and, however, prepare for the worst. I'm very pleased that President Trump, in his conversation on Saturday with President Xi, said that things were going well, and also that the negotiations were making very good progress. I hope that's so. On the other hand, I worry about some of the things that were said in Vice President Pence's October 4th speech at the Hudson Institute, which I look at basically as a declaration of war, at least Cold War, by the U.S. on China. I think China has to get ready for that. It's very worrisome, but I'm an optimist, so I hope that things turn out okay.
I've noticed your note of a cautious optimism about the bilateral relationship, and as Xi Jinping and Mr. Trump said on their phone call that teams from both sides are quietly doing the negotiations to prepare the groundwork that may hopefully ease the tensions arising from the trade relationship between the two biggest economies. Having said this, what do you think of the relationship? I mean, the understatement of what Harvey says actually suggests that 40 years on, because exactly tomorrow, 40 years ago, it's during the Carter administration that the bilateral relationship between the United States and China were normalized, and Mr. Deng Xiaoping, our late senior leader, visited the United States, and we got support from the United States in our opening up, which was, of course, a rare asset in guaranteeing the success of our unprecedented reform and the modernization campaign.
Indeed, I think the tomorrow, I mean, as we enter the New Year, celebrate New Year, we're going to also celebrate or commemorate the 40th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relationship between China and the United States. And it is not a coincidence that China started its reform and opening up 40 years ago and preparing the ground, actually, I mean, for what we have achieved. And for that, I think that only, I mean, it served as testament to the fact that a stable, healthy relationship between China and the United States served the interest, the fundamental interests of the two countries, China and the United States, and the region and the world at large. And it has been repeatedly said, and in the past days and months as the dates are approaching. And the Foreign Ministry of China, literally, I think we yesterday made a statement about that. They say the calling upon the two countries to draw lessons and experience of the past 40 years. That they say cooperation, both China and the United States and the world would benefit. Confrontation, neither side either side would be suffering. And there are a lot of also, I think, the statement put forward some proposals on how to do that. From the Chinese side, they would hope that the United States will continue to look at the strategic intention of China in a positive way, working together for cooperation based on mutual benefit and
but we have the chronic issue of trust deficit between the two countries.
Exactly. And the problem is that, as my colleagues said, that there are some worrying developments, particularly from the United States side, that are challenging the foundation, the assumption, or the policies of the past 40 years, and thinking, advocating of change, to the policy that I think, at least from the viewpoint of China, and also I think for the fundamental interest of China and the United States in the world.
When we look at the normalization of the bilateral relationship, we have to mention President Jimmy Carter. And I'm very proud, and I have the great honor to share my joy that I'm perhaps the only media person in China who has interviewed him at least 3 times. President Carter and his center in Georgia pay so much attention to what we call the democratic construction in the rural areas. It is in the villages where his team witnessed the village elections where I conducted the interview, and I benefited a lot, particularly about how he said about and commented on the normalization of the relationship. By the way, China's modernization campaign actually started from the villages, the so-called family contract responsibility system that Deng Xiaoping initiated in Anhui province. That helps us look at the issue of poverty alleviation, which is also an important part of the year-end speech by President Xi Jinping. While Mike Pence, Vice President of the United States, declared war, quote-unquote, on the U.S.-China relationship geopolitically and on many other fronts, Chinese government and Xi declared a war on poverty. He says our country is ready to completely eliminate poverty in 2 years' time. What do you think of the prospects?
Well, I think that your nation will win the war on poverty in 2020. It's on track to do that. And I think it's a great achievement, not only by itself, but it'll represent the first time in the thousands of years of Chinese history that the country is poverty-free. This is an amazing accomplishment for a country of 1.35 billion people. And I think that this is something that President Carter would also be proud of. I was pleased to work in his administration, and I know that his values are very good, and if he were president today, he would be trying to find a way for the two countries to accommodate with each other, to be more friends than enemies, because we're talking about nothing less than the survival of the world.
Now, next year, which is just a few hours away, will be the 70th anniversary of the People's Republic of China. 70 years ago, late Chairman Mao and his comrades helped establish a new China. Looking past Mr. Rong, we have had debates as to how to look at the first 3 decades and the other decades after the end of the Cultural Revolution. It seems in the official rhetoric, we employ the wording such as very hard probe in dark days for truth, if not alternative truth, in shaping our roadmap of development. Can you brief us on your thoughts as to how to philosophically look at our laws and gains, our achievements and setbacks?
Well, I think the past 70 years since the founding of New China has been a miracle. A miracle in the sense that for a country of Chinese size and population, is being able to achieve national liberation. And that is what we mean when late Chairman Mao Zedong announced at the Tiananmen Gate that the Chinese people has stood up against the humiliation and aggression, and also I think, and also finding a prepared ground for China to achieve national development and to pursue the socialism with Chinese characteristics. And since then, up to the end of the Cultural Revolution, 1976, and then, of course, 2 years later, the beginning of the reform and open up. There were a lot of sort of efforts to explore, to find a way how to build up China economically, to pursue development, to pursue a kind of socialism with Chinese characteristics. Unfortunately, there are been a lot of sort of lessons to learn. There are a lot of, I think, experience to draw, and that has also been very much adopted. Cleared in the documents by the Chinese Communist Party when the 3rd plenary session of the 11th Party Congress were then. So this is very much clear, and it is because of these lessons or this experience that helped China to pursue what now we have been able to achieve in the past 40 years. But I have to say that in retrospect, this process is an ongoing process. This process has always been a kind of a learning process. So But as we have discussed, that the Chinese people, China as a nation, are very much confident that we are good learners and we have a strong leadership. We have such a strong sense of solidarity,
So
hard working of people, so we'll be able to do that.
So the sense of confidence actually comes hand in hand with the sense of humility, given the mistakes that we have made. Some of the mistakes were so expensive at the loss of so many lives in the darkest days since the founding of the PRC in 1949. This year, many diplomatic events took place in China, such as the SCO annual meeting in Qingdao, our summit dialogue with African heads of state, as well as the Shanghai Import Expo, the international one, the first of its kind since also the founding of the PRC. What do you think of China's readiness to assume leadership or shaping a new world order through our proactive diplomatic efforts?
Well, there's several factors that play here. One of them is that for a long time, Deng Xiaoping said, you know, hide your strength and bide your time. And now that is past. So China is exercising a leadership role in the world. But it's not only a proactive thing, it's also reactive in the sense that the United States and other countries, by leaving international institutions or degrading them, has created a vacuum. And China has started filling that vacuum. And President Xi is true to his word that he gave in January 2017 at both Davos and United Nations office in Vienna, that China was going to assume the mantle of globalization and leadership, and China is doing that, and I think it's very important. But I think a necessary step is that a lot of the institutions that China would like to or is trying to assume leadership in, such as United Nations, World Trade Organization, IMF, World Bank, were created without China's presence in the ashes of World War II. And so it's time for a rethink and a look at how those institutions can be changed to both reflect nations like China, India, and some others that have become powerful in the 21st century, and also to reflect 21st century realities. This is not our grandfather's political system anymore.
This New Year speech by President Xi Jinping first and foremost addressed the domestic audience. That comes as no surprise. However, we were talking about the new world order that is emerging fast on the ruins left behind by the presidency of an unpredictable Mr. Donald Trump. Do you think third parties would find it increasingly difficult to take sides, such as Japan, European Union, and South Koreans, in this trade dispute and standoff between U.S. and China? Because it's not just a trade war, which I believe is only a tip of the iceberg. It's a comprehensive picture about who will be the first, the number one in shaping the digital map in the world.
Indeed, I think the trade disputes between China and the United States is not the only bilateral disputes the United States is having. The United States is having trade problems with Japan, with EU, with other countries that have been very closely their allies. So I think the very fact that whether the China-U.S. trade dispute is the most important thing, the result will largely shape and affect the overall direction of how to address the trade dispute like that, and the other important issues like the multilateral trading system, the WTO, others.
Trade disputes are more likely and easier to start, but I'd like to see the end game, how the tensions will be concluded. But of course, it's easier for us to conclude this session of dialogue, the last one of 2018. What would be the greetings you want to share with our audience at this defining moment, very quickly? Harvey.
I hope 2019 is a great year for everybody, win-win.
Certainly, I think 2019 will be greater, it will be another great year.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being with us, our friends who have shown their loyalty to the program. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.